Here he is. Here's Nathan Fletcher back on the show. Mr. Chair, how are you, sir?
I am good, Scott. But you have known me long enough. You just call me Nathan. You don't need to call me Mr. Chair.
Well, I appreciate that, Nathan. First thing, we have no agenda of any kind, so I'm just going to throw a bunch of things at you and let me see what you got. Have you had a chance to drive by Qualcomm Stadium and seen what's going on?
Oh, the devastation! It's just crumbling.
Yeah.
No, I actually saw it. I've driven by it, but half the time I'm on the phone or I'm doing something. I just think oblivious to it. And literally this weekend, when I was going by and I saw the whole half kind of facing east, is just completely demolished and moving. And it's like a mixed emotion, right? It's like a weird feeling.
Yeah. So
I know there's something better coming, but it kind of feels like something being taken away at the same time.
Right. Let me ask you this. The scoreboard, though, if you were looking westerly and you could see what's remaining, that call it 30% or so, but on the opposite side, on the east side, towards the 15 freeway, the scoreboard still remains. We don't know, and we have no idea if you would know. But what are they doing? Like, why are they keeping the scoreboard up, and why are they like building support around the scoreboard? Any idea?
I have no idea. I have no clue. I literally know nothing about it.
We've already started conspiracy theories as of today that they're gonna build a park with that being the central landmark of the park in the new development.
Who knows? I mean, we'd have to find a game we won and mesh that score in there forever.
Yeah.
I would the cumulative average of points there.
Right. Nathan, let me ask you, I know that you've been hounded by the high school football coaches and they want high school football back. And lots of people have strong opinions on both sides, but restaurants are opening. I've read some of the numbers are decreasing in San Diego County. So I'll ask you, A, what can you tell us about COVID related numbers? And B, kind of relate it to sports, be it high school, youth, et cetera.
So I'll try to do this quickly because we could talk for about 5 hours of all of it. I don't want to do that. And then I want to make sure we have time for your questions. But the bottom line of where we are is the numbers are improving. We were running about 4,000 cases per day. We're down to just over 1,000 cases per day. And that is because we put in place the measures that we did. And the measures we did, it's really important, Scotty, that in COVID, there is no good option. You have a bad option and a worse option. And so every decision you're making is what is least bad, right? There is no good option. And so closing indoor dining in restaurants is not good. It's bad, but it is less bad than going to 10,000 cases a day and a complete and total collapse of your healthcare system. And so the measures that were put in place, they actually work. And I could bore you with the 20 peer-reviewed scientific studies, or we could just apply common sense. A respiratory virus spreads when people breathe out. And the person who is close to them has to accumulate enough of the virus to trigger infection. So where are you most likely to get that? You're most likely to get that in indoor settings where you're next to the person for a long period of time, which means the most dangerous settings are settings where two people are close to each other and breathing heavily on one another or breathing. Indoor dining, church services, those types of things are most dangerous. So the measures, they work. They're unfortunate. They have negative consequences, but they do work. They worked in March, stopped the initial spread. They worked in July when we had a spike and we came down. And then they worked again this time to bring the cases from 4,000 down to 1,000. So where are we today? We are in the purple tier. The purple tier is based on case rate. So right now, outdoor dining is back open. Again, because outdoor dining is not as high risk as indoor dining. And we will monitor our case rate. And as we descend down in case rates, we will descend down in tiers. Now, as it relates to youth sports, of course, I want kids to play sports. My whole life, I spent playing sports. As a poor working class kid in rural South Arkansas, football was everything. Like, whatever, I'll be chair of the board, but you know what? I was captain of my high school football team and I was all area and all covered. That means something. And the impact that Coach Dyson and Coach Long and Coach Tucker and those folks had on my life is significant and profound. But Scotty, the choice is not, do you want kids to play sports? That's a binary choice. And so if you're a football coach, yeah, you want kids to play sports, and that is the most important thing, and I get that. But the choice in my seat is what happens if you do something, what is the other thing? And so I keep getting told that Arizona. Well, Arizona lets kids play sports. Well, look at the death rate per person in Arizona. It is double that of San Diego. It is double. Which means if we did what Arizona did, we would have 3,714 more dead people in San Diego County. So I want kids to play sports. Is it worth it to me to do what Arizona did and have 3,714 more dead San Diegans? It's not. And so I know the coaches are all mad, and they took great offense because, I said, when you're facing 3rd and long, you ought to take the advice of a football coach. And when you're facing a global pandemic, you ought to take the advice of public health experts. But I stand by that, and that's true. And that's not diminishing their impact or what they do. It's just the reality. And so we have a path for youth sports. Right now in the purple tier, there's a whole host of all youth sports can practice. They can all practice. They can have organized practice. They just can't have kids in contact with each other. But 2, in the purple tier, there's a whole listing of sports that can resume competitive team-on-team or individual-on-individual competition. Swimming and track and field and cross country and cycling and golf, all those things. When we go to the red tier, there's a whole another group of sports, baseball, softball, others that can resume. Then when we go to the orange tier, again, those, and that's based on risk. And so football is higher risk than cross country. And I think, people say, well, no one gets it from football. Well, I don't know. The Cleveland Browns and the Raiders TCU, there's football teams that may think, well, maybe it actually spreads a little bit, but we will get there. And if we want to get there, what we have to do is lower the case count. And that is our path. We have a path. We have some sports open now. We have more sports that are coming open. We just got to lower the case count, and we will get there.
Well, let me ask you this, though, Nathan. Nathan, let me ask you this. So what did they do? You mentioned Arizona.
Yeah. So
what I don't understand is this, and maybe you can clarify it. So what Arizona did was what? And how are you saying that the death rates in Arizona went up and youth sports or high school sports actually contributed to that? I don't know that.
Well, here's what I'm saying. In general, in San Diego, look, we declared a public health state of emergency before anyone else. We put in place a mask requirement before anyone else. We have more restrictions than the state of Arizona does across the board, both on dining, on retail, on gatherings, and on things like youth sports. And because we have more restrictions, we've had fewer cases, which means we've had fewer deaths. Arizona just took a more open approach. It's a very different approach, but they told everyone, hey, all of you can do a lot more things than you would normally do. And it's a different approach, right? And so, we made in California and in San Diego more of a values-based decision that we don't want people dying. We don't want to run out of ICU beds. And we almost ran out here in San Diego, right? And so that is important. And so we're going to have these measures in place designed to slow this. Arizona wasn't as committed to that. They took a different approach. Now, people can say, well, look, they got, their economy didn't do any better. So there wasn't an economic benefit. People can say, well, they enjoyed more of their life. But in exchange for that, they accepted significantly more death. And I'm not saying, and I'm not defending that the things we've done have been without negative impact. Look, our 17-year-old is heartbroken. He missed his senior year of being captain of the water polo team. He's heartbroken. But he's also glad that my wife's dad, who lives with us, who's 77, didn't die. And so everything you've got to, the only thing I ask folks to do, I don't ask folks to agree with what we did. I don't ask them to support what we did or think I'm a good person to make good decisions. None of that. That's all folks who make their own decisions. I just ask folks to consider for a little bit that a decision doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so when folks have one thing and this is their only thing, I want you to understand in my seat, I got to take into account all of the factors, right? And the impacts of what happens there. And so, that's where we are. And we've got a path to get youth sports back. And on the football thing too, when I played football, it was a fall sport. And by the fall, we ought to be through this and we ought to be fully open. And we ought to be able to have a full season. And so I know it's been hard on kids, and our kids are struggling. Families are struggling, teachers, seniors, small business. But it is a global pandemic, and just wishing it away or wishing we could just do something and it would all be okay, it's just not an option.
I have a long list of questions I want to ask, but I won't do that. What I will do is this. No. What I will do is this, because there are two other people here and they have questions and concerns as well. I want to thank you because sometimes you can't protect people from themselves enough. I'm one of the people who I played high school sports. Sports saved my life. Okay. And I don't think people understand the gravity of what this is and how people really don't have a full grasp of what the virus is. Like, it's mutating now. There are different strands now. What happens if this new strand or some strand comes out of nowhere that affects high school kids or kids between the ages of 9 and 18? They're going to look at you and go, well, why did you let kids play high school football? And then now you have the answer for that. Like, you can't please everyone. And so it's hard, as more arrows as you're taking. I'm on the side of, I want to thank you for putting people's lives first, as opposed to letting these other outside things and these individual interests, lack of a better word, trump what's actually the most important thing. And that's people surviving this, getting past this, and having a life after this.
No, man. Where you been for the last year, man? I know. But look, I appreciate that, because it's not, I'm in this big battle today with all of law enforcement because they all want the vaccine right now. And I'm like, this is just a perfect example. Like, they want it, and I get it, because everyone looks out for themselves, right? But right now we're doing seniors who are 90% going to die, and I can't just give into that pressure and say, okay. And that's been the hardest thing of COVID, is like, we got to make these incredibly awful decisions. But at some point, you got to have the fortitude to say, this is what I believe is best with all of the data and all the doctors and all the studies and everything I have. And you just know, a big chunk of people are going to hate it and not understand it and not get it. And that's okay. But no one ever ran for office to kill restaurants or small business or any of that. And we're doing the best. And your words really mean a lot to me. And I really do appreciate that. Keep
up the good fight, man. You're doing a good job. Don't let all the others, no one, like you said, you're in a position where there are no good decisions. And so you're trying to stop a bad thing from getting worse. And I just don't think people understand that, because they go home and they see their kid upset, or some football coach or some basketball coach wants to coach. And you can't be mad at them for wanting to do what they do. But at the same time, you would appreciate if they had a bigger picture and looked at not only football, but a senior citizen home or a Vons. Like, all these things are a chain of things that work together. And I just wish people had more open-mindedness.
But I'll just give the flip side, though, would be
Please do.
And Nathan said it. He's got a 17-year-old at home who missed his senior season of, was it water polo, Nathan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets it. I mean, he understands, I guess, that there is a kid still home. He's not going to school. He's not participating in sports. By the way, it may have unfortunately affected him in some other way, emotional related issues. Nathan, I've been to 2 funerals of kids who committed suicide.
Yeah.
Both of whom, when they spoke about these kids, they were smart and good looking and headed towards a great college and athletic. They were all of these things. And you go, how did this kid? And you wonder what the emotional impact of COVID is on young people, particularly young people who are active. And it doesn't have to just be sports, but active in their school community and so on. And all of that has been taken away from these young kids. And so I applaud you for holding strong. I also applaud the football coaches, because they feel like they're sticking up for the kids, you know?
And I'm not mad at the football coaches they're doing their thing, and that's good. And they don't look, their job is not to look at the system as a whole and not to look at society as a whole, right? That's not their job. Their job is their section of the world. But it's my job. My job is to look at the whole county. And it is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. Look, I've done more work around mental health and suicide issues as a combat veteran, watching my friends blow their brains out. I've invested, my highest priority as a supervisor prior to COVID was mental health and drug treatment services. And the impact on COVID is real. And it is devastating and heartbreaking to see those deaths and think like, well, maybe this contributed to them. And it's also devastating for the firefighter we just buried who got COVID and died, and the thousands of San Diegans who did that. And then when you try to detach the emotion and you say, now what's the right decision? Suicide in 2020 in San Diego County was lower than it was in 2019. Now, I'm not saying that people are doing great. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying there aren't negative impacts. But when you look at the totality of what we face, I feel like we can catch a kid up in school. We can replay a season. We can give flexibility to repeat a grade. We can rebuild a business. All that is true. But you can't get back that life that's been lost. And the stories I hear every day from family members who are like, yeah, we had a healthy 62-year-old who was vibrant and living life, and they're gone. And there's thousands of them. That puts you in a difficult situation. The other thing that I think gets lost a lot in COVID is what happens doesn't just impact COVID patients. So when we had that massive surge and it was out of control and the protests and the lockdowns aren't working and all that type of stuff, do you know how we made space in our hospitals? We kicked everyone else out. So you had cancer patients who had a tumor removal procedure canceled because they said, we don't have any room for you. You had this one guy needed a kidney transplant. They had the kidney, they had the guy. They're like, nope, too bad, no room for you. And we got down to single digit number of ICU beds available, which means if you're in an SUV with your family and you had a car crash, there might have not been a place for you. Now, we got close to that line. Fortunately, we didn't tip it. Other jurisdictions did. Other jurisdictions, I was in these exhaustive meetings where you decide, how do you decide who dies when you run out of healthcare? And we have avoided that situation in San Diego County. But Scotty, none of what we've done has been good. And there's no, in this situation, there's no good way. And I get up every day and I re-challenge what we think and why we think it. And I relook at the data and I relook at the projections and I redo this. And then at the end of the day, we just got to make the difficult and hard decisions. And you accept that people are going to protest my home and, cops are going to have to sit in my driveway and all that, because that's the world we live in. And I accept that. And I'm not mad at people that are upset. I just got to get up every day and I got to do true to what I believe is in the best interest of our county, knowing it's going to piss a whole lot of people off all the time. And I'm not doing it intentionally and I'm not doing it gratuitously. It's just about how we best get through this thing.
God, you're out of your mind. I would never do it. I would never do that job. You were better off working at Qualcomm. You seen the Qualcomm stock, dude? I mean, give me a break. Come on. What are you, out of your mind doing this job? By the way,
you know what though? And I love the people there, and I still stay in touch with Paul and with all those folks. And they treated me great, but I hated it. No. They were wonderful people. No. A wonderful company, and they treated me great. And I did fascinating work and I traveled and I worked really hard. But like I grew up like working class kid. My mom runs shelters for battered women and children, right? That's a personal issue for me and her. She had me as a teenager and we had a rough start to life, but she got up every day and she brought it to help people, and like some part of that stuck in me. And when I was a Marine, I loved what I did. I got up every day because I'm helping people. Those Marine commercials, those around us who run towards the sound of injustice and tyranny and danger, and that appealed to whatever like insecurity we have. But it also like that meant something to me. I got up every day and I fought and I was willing to sacrifice for the greater good. And then I went to the legislature and I did that. I got up every day and I fought. We fought for Chelsea's Law. We fought for all these things, right? But I was sacrificing for the greater good. And then I go to Qualcomm and they're wonderful folks and a great company. They treated me well. And it was like I couldn't get motivated. I mean, I just couldn't get, and I worked hard, but I never in my life have I not wanted to get out of bed in the morning. I get out of bed in the morning at 5 a.m. every morning, and I am on the computer, I'm on the phone, I'm reading a study, I'm thinking about my day. How do we do this? How do we do that? What do we do? And even at its darkest hour, I still know that right or wrong, I'm in the fight every day trying to make our community better. And I just didn't have that. And so, so I got back into politics and, people hate you, but they don't really hate me. Honestly, they don't hate me because they don't know me. If my buddy Lou Orozco, who I was in the Marines with for more than a decade, Lou knows me. If Lou comes out and says Nathan Fletcher is a dirtbag and a bad person, you should listen to Lou because Lou knows. But these folks in politics, they don't know you and they aren't really criticizing me. It's the position I hold. Scotty, the day after I lost the mayor's race, guess what happened? No one was talking about me because it wasn't really me. It's the position. And so you got to have the ability when you're in this job. Look, I know my job is going to end at some point. It's going to end. Either I'm going to term out or the voters are going to have enough of me and want someone else. And then when it ends, all that hatred and love both will go to whoever comes next. and I'll go on with my life, with my friends and my family and the things I enjoy doing. But for this time and for right now, I'm in the fight every day, doing the best I can.
Hey, Nathan, before you go, and I know we've taken a lot of your time, I've read some of your work in the cannabis world now. And just, I don't know if you know this or not, we work with a company called HVGC, Hellman Valley Growers Company.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of these guys?
No.
Dude, former Marines. They were in the Hellman Valley. I'm sure you know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
And these guys came back and they were dealing with PTSD issues and prescription pills. They all got into the cannabis world and they put all their profits right back into research and working with the government to try and use cannabis as a way to deal with PTSD issues. Dude, I got to introduce you to these guys. These guys are amazing.
Can I give you a minute on this? Because this got a little controversial the other day.
Yeah, go for it.
The notion, like there is not a single, according to DEA, CDC, FDA, not a single cannabis overdose death ever recorded. There's also no evidence that it is a gateway drug. In fact, there's significant evidence that it impedes gateway drugs in terms of moving forward. There's significant evidence that places that have a safe, regulated, and legal market have less youth access, because when it's safe, regulated, and legal, then there aren't all the outlets for kids to go get it. And the notion that we would not adopt a framework that allows this to be available to consumers is just baffling to me. And, we took all this, this heat over this issue and like, look, make it safe, regulated, and legal. And I'll tell you as a vet, like I've had 15 major arthroscopic surgeries on my body. I won't take the pain pills because I don't want them. You know why? Because I have addictive genetics and I would like them. And I'm smart enough to figure out how to keep getting them. And we're doing that to our vets when they come home. And that's just one point. We're giving them these jugs of powerful opioids that are addictive when we could be giving them a different, more viable path if they choose that. And so, we're moving forward on a safe, regulated, and legal system for our county. And I think it's the right thing to do. And then the last thing is, why do we want the cartels? I mean, people are going to smoke pot. Why wouldn't we want it to be safe and regulated and legal? And why wouldn't we want the county to have the proceeds from that and put that back into good causes, put that into our foster care system, or put that into, some other type of thing. And so I support what we're doing, but it's a little
I got to introduce you to these guys, Hellman Valley Growers Company, and all these Marines. Hey, Nathan, have a great day. Thanks you for all this time. Thanks for what you're doing. I would never do it in a million years. They don't pay you nearly enough to deal with all this nonsense. Much love and appreciation. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Happy to come back on anytime.